What's happening YouTube? Darren from Tech Monkeys here, back with the latest tech tips video where we answer your questions and questions from around the internet. Before we get started, just a reminder that we still need your tech questions. So leave a comment below or catch us on Twitter and we'll be only too glad to create a video explaining how to fix your issue or how to troubleshoot the issue yourself. So today I'm going to be showing you how to troubleshoot network and internet related issues. I'll be explaining some basic network concepts, but don't worry, I'm going to keep it as user friendly as possible. And decided to cover this because we saw a lot of questions on the tech support subreddit, other forums around the internet, asking questions like, why does my internet keep cutting out? Why am I getting such high pings in this game and that game? Why are web pages so slow to load? Why can't I load this web page? Why can't I access a server on my network? Or variations thereof even. Most of these issues will come down to a problem with your internal network configuration or even your internet connection. It might be DNS related. Don't worry, I'll go into what DNS is. And in this video, I'm going to show you, hopefully, how to work out what the problem is and what you can do about it. So the first thing you need to know when you're dealing with a network or internet related issue is a little bit about your own home network. So what you need to know is how your network's actually set up, how it's configured, and how things connect together internally from your computers, your phones, your router, and any other network devices you may have in the house. So, from your desktop, if you look down in the task tray down at the bottom next to the little clock, you'll see various icons of the programs you've got running. But one you'll always see is this little computer screen. If you're running on Wi-Fi, it'll look like the little Wi-Fi signal icon. If you right-click on there and choose Open Network and Sharing, it'll bring up a little bit about information. Now, in here, it gives you a basic overview. It'll tell you what type of connection it is. Mine's an Ethernet connection. It'll tell you if you've got home groups created. Don't worry, we don't need to worry about those. Whether you've got an internet connection and the name of your network. In my instance, it's called Network 4. It's just the generic name Windows has come up with. The actual bit we're interested in here, though, is not troubleshoot problems. Very rarely seems to have any effect, believe it or not. Is over here, change the adapter settings. Your adapter is your physical network connection, so either your Ethernet card or your wireless card, and in here you will see maybe one, maybe two, maybe even 5 or 6 depending on what computer you've got and how it's configured. In my case, I've only got 2. One's a virtual network connector and the other one's actually my physical hardware, which you can tell which one you're using. It's the one that's lit up and doesn't have a little red X below it. If you go ahead and right click on your connection, whether it's Ethernet or wireless, and choose Properties. You do need to be running as an administrator on the machine. You won't be able to do this if you're using a works computer or a school computer or something like that. So you do need to be the owner and administrator of the machine. In here, there are various items that the connection uses to talk across networks or to do various jobs within your network. The only one we're really interested in at this moment is your TCP IP version 4 or Internet Protocol version 4. Every computer on the internet, on your internal network, has what's called an IP address. An IP address, just think of it as the address of your house. It's an individual address for that device on your network that allows the traffic on the internet or on your home network to know where it's going. So when you send a file, it'll be going to an IP address, and that IP address is the address on the internet or the network of another machine. In here, this is how 99% of you will have your network configuration. Obtain an IP address automatically and obtain a DNS server automatically. What that means is you have a router or maybe even a server that is giving out those addresses. It'll only give one individual address to each device on the network. You'd only really ever have this if you were having problems or you had a very unique network setup where you can specify your own address and how you want it configured on your network. So what you want to make sure of first is make sure you're in obtain an IP address automatically. And cancel back out of here. So just to cover that again, that was right click on your Ethernet connection, click onto version 4 and click properties, and that'll tell you whether you're on obtain. Once you know, come back out there, and that's how it should be configured. Now, what that doesn't tell us is what your actual network address is. So, if you want to find out your network address, there's a couple of ways of doing it, but my preferred way is to click on the Start menu and type in CMD, Charlie Mike Delta, and it'll bring up command prompt. Open that up, and you'll be greeted with this little black screen. Now, this is the command prompt. This is where Windows allows you to run some more super user commands, if you like, or allows you to do things without the graphical interface, which us old tech heads much prefer in some instances. The command we'll be interested in, or to start with, is ipconfig. Press enter, and you'll see it spew back a whole load of information. So this tells us a little bit more about our network. It tells us what our IP address is, the subnet mask, which is, if you think of a postcode, it's or a zip code in America, it's the area, rather than the IP address, which is your individual home address, and the default gateway. That is, as it sounds, the gateway to the internet. So if there's a piece of traffic that is destined for something on the internet, it knows to go out the default gateway and go looking out there. So we now know what our IP address is, we know what our subnet mask is, and we know what the default gateway is. So let's imagine we're having an issue contacting another device on the network. We'd want to perform this task on both devices, so you may go onto your mum, dad, brother, cousin, whoever's computer and perform those same tasks. Make sure they're set to automatic configuration on their Ethernet card or the wireless card. Then come into here and check that they are on the same IP range. So if you're on 192.168.1.66 like I am, they should be on a similar IP, but that last digit there should be different. You shouldn't have two devices with the same. You don't want two 66s, otherwise when you're delivering that piece of information it doesn't know where to go. I, for example, have a device on my network called McNaz, so I should be able to find out that's address. And this is another very useful command, ping. So ping is essentially sending a packet of data, or a larger packet of data, to another device on the network. And it sends a signal and lets you know if you're getting a reply back. That's your way of knowing that two devices can talk, everything's fine on that network. So in my instance, I pinged McNaz, and you can see that's come back saying mcnaz.home has an address of 192.168.1.250. So that is another device on my network. Same area code, yet smaller, different IP address, different physical address, if you like. So that tells me all is well. If I run that again, you can see what it's actually doing is sending a signal to 192.168.1.250. Sending it 4 times. It's got a reply from. It took 3 milliseconds, 4 milliseconds, 4 milliseconds, 4 milliseconds. That's actually reasonably high, but it's because I'm using home plugs. Typically on a home network, you want to be looking at 1 millisecond or less. But 3 or 4 milliseconds is not going to cause you a major problem. You can see the other device I could have pinged on my network there, or sent a signal to, was my default gateway. Default gateway is essentially just your internet router. So if we were to type in 192.168.1.254, again, I should be getting a reply from that, because if I can't talk to my default gateway, I'm definitely not going to be talking to the internet. So ping is very useful for basic troubleshooting on your network. If you're having problems getting to the internet, the first thing you want to do is come in here, do ipconfig, find out what your IP address is, and more importantly what your router is, and send a signal or ping 192.168.1.254. That will tell you if you're at least getting to your router. If you're not getting to your router, there's a connection break, there's something not working between you and your router. Check if you can ping other devices on your network, if you have other devices. If not, do the usual things that your ISP will tell you. Reset the router, check the cables, make sure you're connected if you're on Wi-Fi to the right wireless network. And that's it. Pinging by IP address is the first way to diagnose an issue. Now, if you can ping it by IP address, I'm trying to think of an example here. Yeah, so if you can if I ping my NAS again, but this time by 192.168.1.250, if I could type it right. Yeah, still got it wrong. Oh, that's actually, I suppose that's quite useful to see. If there's a problem, in this case I've got the address wrong, but the device isn't working, you'll get request timed out. That means something's wrong. It cannot talk, it cannot communicate, so that should be immediately obvious. Let's just clear this. Yeah, so if I ping my NAS, 192.168.1.250, we know it's replying. We know it can talk by IP address, I can get to its information. But what if I still can't access it? In my instance, I actually access my NAS, not by its IP address, because who's going to remember those numbers all the time? But you can see here, I access my NAS by its name. It's called McNAS. Now that relies on something called DNS. I can ping McNAS. DNS is essentially a friendly mask, a name that has been given to each device on the internet or each device on your home network to mask that IP address of 192.168.1.250. So, because when Tim Berners-Lee, or I don't know if he invented the DNS system, but he certainly invented the internet, came up with the internet, they realised quite quickly people were not going to remember IP addresses. They were not going to have memory banks that could withhold every IP address of every server, every internet site they wanted, so they needed a friendlier way for people to remember where to go or how to get to a device or a website. So they came up with the DNS system, and that is giving a name to an IP address. So in my instance, the name McNAS translates to 192.168.1.250. Now, if you can ping a device by its IP but not by its DNS name, you've got a DNS issue. And you can see that by typing the same command we typed before, ipconfig, but this time put a space, then /all. This will spew back a whole load more information. So not just your IP address, subnet and gateway, but a bit more detail about your actual network. Host name, node type, we don't need to go into. Type of network card. Physical address is a MAC address, again not really important in this instance. And whether you've got DHCP enabled. DHCP is, as I said before, where you get the address automatically assigned by a device, a router or a server, rather than manually typing each address into your network. It means you're using DHCP. And your IPv4 address, subnet, when it was obtained, this morning in my instance. And a few more information. One of those bits of information there is your DNS server address. In most cases, again, it will be exactly like mine. It will be the same as your DHCP server and your default gateway. That means you have one device on your network that is controlling everything from what addresses you get to keeping a log or a database of what device is tied to what IP address and what DNS name. So if you cannot ping by DNS name, it means you've got a problem with your DNS configuration here. You may have more than one DNS server, don't worry about that if you do, but it's important if you're trying to talk to a device on your local network, your DNS server needs to be a local address, so similar to your IP address. If it's not, if you have something a bit more like 8.8.8.8, you might be able to get onto the internet, but you're not going to be able to talk to devices on your local network, because 8.8.8.8 is Google's DNS server, so Google's DNS server doesn't know about what's behind your router at this side. Again, to check your DNS configurations, right click your little network icon, open network, change adapter settings, right click on your connection, properties, and go to Internet Protocol version 4. Down here, you may have selected DNS addresses, physical DNS you may have manually specified. So if I was putting that address, which I said earlier is Google's, what you'll see if we go back here, I'm just going to run a command here to clean out my DNS settings just so it doesn't remember and prove me wrong here. And I try and ping McNAS. It works. It shouldn't have worked because my DNS address is now 8.8.8.8. So technically it shouldn't work, but who knows, Windows. But if you're having that issue, if you can't talk to local networks, it's probably because your if you can't talk by DNS name to device on your local network, it's because your DNS servers are probably configured wrong. You don't want 8.8.8 as your main address. Mine is just remembering connections that it's already made. If I was to give this a couple of hours, a day, and restart it, all of a sudden I wouldn't be able to talk to that McNAS address anymore. So just go back into your network settings and make sure that you've got it set to obtain an IP address automatically. So that's a little bit about your home network, how to troubleshoot whether there's issues on your home network. You can do the same with the ping and the DNS and everything like that for internet addresses. So let's say you were having problems accessing Google. You could, instead of pinging an IP address internally or a DNS name internally, you can ping www.google.co.uk. This will tell you Google, whether you're getting a signal from Google. It will tell you their IP address, or they have millions of IP addresses, but it'll tell you whether you can actually get to any of them. And it'll tell you, again, whether you're getting that reply from Google's IP address. If you're not, you probably have external DNS issues. So, very similar to the way we looked at it before. If you're having issues, you can talk locally, you can talk to your router. Your router says you've got an internet connection, all is well. You need to check external DNS. Now, your internet provider will provide a DNS address for you. Basically, when you try and ping Google, what happens is it's not on your internal network. So if we remember, anything that's not on your internal network will be sent to your router or your default gateway. Your gateway will then look at what DNS addresses it has, and it will forward your traffic onto those DNS addresses. It may be that your router or your ISP's DNS servers are having issues, and that's why you can't get to the internet today. Really quick, simple fix for that. But back into exactly where we were before, into the network settings, back into change adapt settings, back into IPv4, and this time we are going to manually set a DNS address. You can use other DNSs. I just find Google's to be the most stable and always available addresses. They're both of the main ones. There are probably more, but those are the only ones you'll really need to know is 4.8s and 2.8s and 2.4s. Basically, the reason you have an alternate is if it can't reach that one, if it's not getting the response it needs from that address, it will try the next one. You can have even more. You can specify as many DNS servers in there, but 2's usually more than enough. So we can still ping Google, and that's fine. I won't go into this too much, but there is another way of testing your DNS servers, and that's using a command called nslookup. And that will tell you what DNS server you're actually referencing. So you can see there I'm using Google's public DNSA. And in here, once you've typed nslookup, you can then type whatever you want, bbc.co.uk, and it will tell you whether you're getting a response, what all the addresses are. These are IPv6 addresses. We don't need to worry about IPv6 at this moment in time. We're only interested in the groups of 4 digits, which are the IP addresses. To come out of nslookup, type exit. It's another way of finding out whether your DNS server is doing what it should. It's name server lookup or nslookup. So, you can access the internet. You can access your local network. Well, actually, no, let's go back a step because there's one thing we haven't covered. Let's imagine you can talk to your router, but your router isn't allowing you out to the internet. You can't ping it by IP, you can't ping it by DNS. You've got an internet problem. How do you access your router? Now, most people will know this. This is going to be a quick overview. I'm not going to go into details because everybody's router is different. But what you need to know is running that IP config, your default gateway, you want the IP address of your router. In my case, 192.168.1.254. Bring that up. Bring up any web browser, sorry. So Chrome is my personal favourite. Right click, paste and go, or just type in the address bar, and it will take you to your router's homepage. Now, some routers, before you see any information, will ask you for a username and password. You'll probably find, if you haven't set it, it's on a sticker or a little card on the back of your router. If you're on a BT router like mine, it shows you there. It's in a little card stuck on the back of the router. It might be stuck underneath if you lost the little card. But what this will show you, without going into the settings of the router, is whether you've got an actual internet connection, whether your Wi-Fi status is enabled. You'll get a little bit more information. You get different information depending on your router. My actual own personal favourite brand of router is Draytech, just because they're very good for troubleshooting and doing a little bit more complex networking with. It'll show you a bit more about your wireless networks, your Ethernet or physical cable network. You can see my computer there. You can see my NAS device and an unknown device, which in this case I think is a home plug. And your wireless devices. My phone's the only thing connected at the moment. Everybody else is out. That's why I'm able to make a video. So I don't want this video to go on for hours and hours. We're already 20 minutes in. So essentially accessing your router will give you a little bit more information about what's going on with your internet connection. If it says disconnected, if it says unable to sync, speak to your ISP, check your cables, speak to your ISP, restart the router, you do the usual things. So, one of those questions we keep seeing, is when there is issues with ping spikes. Do you know, if you ever want to test how fast your internet connection is, there's two ways. Well, there's more than two ways, there's lots of ways, but if you want to do a basic test on how quick your internet connection is and whether you're getting the speed your ISP says you should be getting, go on to Google, type speed test. One of the ways, have Google got rid of it? Google used to have their own speed test built in here. Doesn't matter, the one I prefer to use anyway is this, speedtest.net. Make sure you're going to this website, not any spammy pretend website, but speedtest.net by Ookla. Don't get me wrong, this is getting a bit spammy these days. It's more and more adverts. The speed test won't load until your adverts have loaded, he says, as the speed test loads before. And what it'll bring up is this page with begin test. Here come the adverts. For BT, because look, I just went and looked at my router, now BT wants to advertise to me. So this will test your connection speed between you, and it will automatically pick the closest location, in my case Leeds, Bradford, York, as I'm in West Yorkshire, or you can choose where you want it to ping it to. So if you knew, for example, you were connecting to a game service somewhere in Holland or Germany or, well, sorry, that's Germany, or somewhere else in the Republic of Ireland, you can select a server, but usually the closest is best. Simply click begin test. Now what it's first going to do is run a ping to that server. Now, if you remember, our internal pings were about 3 milliseconds, so pinging this other server somewhere else on the internet is always going to be higher. In my case, it's 16 milliseconds. BT tell me I should be getting 70 meg broadband, so, 69. It's download speed, so that's how fast a file comes from the internet down to your machine. And then you've got your upload speed, which in most cases is always going to be slower. Most ISPs give you a much slower upload rate. And yeah, this is all you need to do. You just click that button, wait for these 3 tests to configure, and make sure that you're getting something like, if your ISP says you're getting 70 meg and you're getting 60 odd, it's not particularly a problem. There could be something on your computer or something else on your network that is using some of that bandwidth. The only way to get a true result would be to disable your Wi-Fi, disconnect everything, plug direct into the router and run that test. But as long as you're getting somewhere close, it's a basic test of how fast your internet connection is and whether you're getting what you should be getting. Something not many people know, but is quite handy. This little link up at the top, my results, will give you a history. Now, I've not on this connection run any other speed tests, but if I was to go back and run another, what we'd see down here is a history of my speed test from this location, so you can see whether it's fluctuating, whether you're having certain periods of the day where it's up and down. Excuse me. And it's just quite useful if you're trying to do some historical troubleshooting. So that will tell you the speed of your internet. But what if your speed's fine, but you're still getting that high ping in a game, or you're getting slow to load web pages, or a specific web page is being very slow? That could mean one of two things. Either the server you're trying to connect to, the game you're trying to connect to, has slow service, but if other people are not having that issue, you know it's not true. Or there's a routing issue. There is a problem between you and that specific device. So let's say, in my example, bbc.co.uk was being very slow to load. How can I figure out? I can run a ping, and that'll tell me that I'm getting a 15, 16 milliseconds, which is about standard for, I'm in the UK. I'd expect it to be about there, somewhere about there. But what if yours is coming back high? Where's the problem? Well, the first thing you need to know is your problem internally. So again, ping your default gateway address. 4 milliseconds, 5 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds. It's not that high. As I say, 1 millisecond would be better, but I'm running over quite slow home plugs. So it's not internally. It is somewhere between you and BT, but what you have to understand is the way the internet works is not a direct connection from your house to the BBC servers. There are hops all the way along, so you'll pass first to your router, which is the first hop. You'll then pass to a BT infrastructure router, which is another hop. They'll pass you on to another router or another exchange device, which will be another hop and another hop and another hop. And there could be 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 hops between you and where you're going. The less hops, the better. But any one of those hops could be having an issue. That's called your route. So you will have a route between you and bbc.co.uk in this instance. So to try and troubleshoot where the problem is so that you can go back to your ISP and say, I've analysed the problem and I've got an idea of where it is, you use this command, trace RT or trace route, it stands for. And again, use the same way, you just put in the address you're trying to trace to. And what you'll see here is the hops your system takes to get to that website or to that server that you're trying to connect to. Now, my first hop, as you can see there, is my router, 192.168.1.254. And what you see next is in hop 2 and hop 3 so far, I'm getting request times out. Doesn't mean there's a problem there. It just means that those devices, some devices on the internet, some websites, some servers, will not respond to a ping. So they won't give you their address and they won't give you a response. They're designed to do that. It's to protect against hacking and for giving out information. But you can see there, it's carried on afterwards. It's got to hop 4, which is to 31.55.185.180, whatever that is, something on BT's core network. We're then on this hop 5 is core 2, so that's a core router within BT's network. You can tell at the end it's still got BT. So by hop 6, we're still in BT's network. We haven't gone anywhere yet. Hop 7 may be outside now. Excuse me. Oh no, well, if you look at the IP addresses at the end, 195.99.127.142, tells me that this address, hop 7, 195.99.126.71, is probably still within BT's network. It's on the same first 2 octets, or the first 2 sections of the IP address are identical. We'll then get another device that doesn't want to tell us what it is or where it is, and now we're into BBC's network. So hop 9, so after the 9th hop across the internet, we're into the BBC network, and we now have a response from there. Another device inside the BT network, again 132.185, and then finally we're to the bbc.co.uk server, which is all done completely within 19 milliseconds or 20 milliseconds. So it tests the speed 3 times, but that's the important bit. That's what we're looking for. So let's say your ping up here to the bbc.co.uk website was 400 milliseconds. You come down here, you look at your trace route. Your router was 4. The next hop we can see is 16, so that's fine. Then it's 13. Let's imagine this hop 6 suddenly said 300 milliseconds. After that, guaranteed every other reply is going to say 300 or more milliseconds, because that is the bottleneck. That is where the problem is on your journey to that website or server. So you need to contact BT and say, listen, I've done a trace route and it's showing on this IP address or this DNS name, core2hu0 blah blah blah, collindale.uk, ukcore.bt.net is responding at 400 milliseconds. That's not something you can do anything about internally. It's not your problem. It's not your router. After it's left your router, after the traffic leaves this address, there's very little you can do about the speed of the internet. You need to speak to your ISP, or if this was a game server you were trying to connect to or something like that, you would need to speak to potentially the host of that. BT won't be able to do anything about the speed of a specific server. You would have to speak to the host of that. In this case, you wouldn't have much chance of speaking to BBC, but the chances are BBC will never respond slowly, so if there is a slow response somewhere, it's going to be in BT or Virgin or Comcast if you're in the US, whoever your network is. That shows you the basic troubleshooting of a network. You're either going to have problems with ping, you're going to have problems with your IP address, you're going to have problems with your DNS address, or you're going to have problems with your route to wherever you're trying to get to. If a web page is loading slow, it's more than likely going to be a ping related issue, unless it's just a terribly designed web page, but that's a story for another day. I hope that sheds some light on it. I know I sometimes can talk fast. I'm trying to slow myself down a little bit. I get a little bit excited and carried away. But hopefully it's helped you get a bit of a basic understanding of how your network works. One command I didn't show there is if you are having DNS related issues and you have checked your DNS settings, you've gone back and everything looks okay, but you're still having DNS issues, really important command. or set of commands is ipconfig /flush DNS, which should flush your machine's internal DNS records, the things that it's remembered about where devices are and what their names are on the network. And the other one is ipconfig /register DNS. This will re-register your device with the DNS server and pull back all the new records that may have come up since you were last on it. This last command, as you're about to see, you can't run in a normal command prompt. You need to run it with admin rights. Even if you're logged into the computer as an administrator, you still need to be running the application. So go to your little command prompt icon on the taskbar, right click on it. When this comes up, right click on command prompt again and just choose run as administrator. You'll get a prompt. Click yes, and now you'll be able to ipconfig register DNS. If I could put the C in config, it'll come back. Windows IP registration of the DNS records for all adapters of this computer have been initiated, and the errors will be reported in the event viewer in 15 minutes. Don't worry about the event viewer, that's a topic for another video where I'll be showing you how to troubleshoot generic issues on your machine. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it hasn't been too technical and you've been able to follow along. Any comments you have, or specifically any questions you have for us, anything we can do to help you understand your computer better, troubleshoot a specific issue, please let us know in the comments section below or hit us up on Twitter, as I keep saying. Thanks for watching and we'll catch you on the next video.